Another episode of NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. This episode, we are talking about the Cleveland Browns, very timely because of the Deshaun Watson news. And I am joined by John Suchan from Dawg Daily, and he does a lot of different things and, focusing on the Browns. And it's very raw and very interesting right now. So let's just kind of dig right into it. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Yes, the last 48 hours has been very much a roller coaster of emotion. So
Yeah. So
thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. And when you look at it, I mean, it has been a roller coaster because they were out and the stuff with Baker. And so let's just kind of get right into
shock and awe. That's right.
Yeah. Even from like a non Browns fan, it's like, okay, I mean, does this make sense? And when you look at the compensation, so
Mm-hmm.
3
Yes.
first-round picks,
Yep.
Third round pick in 2023, fourth rounder in 2024, and for arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but there's a lot of baggage, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's been as I try to be objective as when I write for Dawg Daily and other Cleveland Sports Talk, but it's very emotional for a lot of us fans because of what you just said. There's two sides to this. From the football standpoint, he's an all pro. I mean, he's excellent. Stats will support that. He was out last year, obviously, or with everything that was going on outside off the field. But just stick to what you're sharing up there on the screen right now. The compensate. I mean, the Browns still have 8 picks in this draft. They did lose their first round pick, but they didn't lose any other picks for this year's draft. So they still have 8 strong picks, 1 in the second round, I think 2 in the third, and 1 in the fourth. So I imagine there's still going to be it'll be interesting to see what they do with those other draft picks if they try to swap them or move up or down to get various players. But yeah, it's been a lot. There's a lot of emotion here in the area. Anybody who's a Browns fan across the country is experiencing 2 sides of the coin today.
Yeah, it was interesting. We were texting offline, and you said your cousin not going to be a fan of the Browns. And why is it such a negative response from the fans? Other than the compensation, I mean, he's a great player and could really take the Browns to the next level, right? I mean,
yeah. And then there's a lot of it's all that stuff that's happening off the field, and the I know he was not charged with any of the criminal activities. There are still several civil suits. So I think the biggest issue I find with fans right now is that if you've been a fan of the Browns for a long, long time, especially, and then even recently with this new group that has come in, Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry, they've talked about bringing in strong character guys to build on this program. And what has happened the last week and how they went about it too. So publicly, obviously, was it a tactful ploy on their part? They knew this would be the reaction, or so there's a lot of questions this morning about how are they going to respond? How is that initial press conference? Are they going to be sharing what they know, and are they going to be open and out front about it to the fans and the public? Because right now there's a lot of anger, despise, like I said, my cousin, other cousins, family, friends who have been lifelong fans longer than me. And, I'm old and they're season ticket holders, and they're not going to renew, or they're not going to, take up on those tickets. And it's one of those things where you're talking about a player, a very good football player who could, like you said, take the Browns, and potentially there are huge upsides to that for this team. But can you cheer for the player? Can you cheer for the team? That's kind of where things lie this morning.
Yeah, and we talk about kind of the roller coaster. I mean, those same fans that when you heard you were in on Deshaun Watson, and then it was reported that they were out. I mean, was there just kind of a sigh of relief at that time?
I mean, personally, I think because you're invested seeing what they were going to do. Obviously, it's a big news story. I write for Dawg Daily, so everyone's kind of sitting on the edge of their seat, checking their Twitter. I think I had a couple articles earlier this week about that. I think there was an article I posted yesterday about the The title of the article was the Cleveland Browns March Madness: the good, the bad, the ugly. We're all sitting there trying to figure out what's going to happen. And then when they said that he wasn't in the running, so then you're contemplating, okay, what's going to happen now? Because Baker Mayfield, very upset, he comes out with that letter a few nights ago saying that he probably was going to be leaving. It's kind of a goodbye letter, and comes back and then is requesting the trade. Was it yesterday? Everything's kind of
yeah.
And so then the Browns say no. So then the people are upset that they're not letting, like, if Baker wants the trade, the people that are supporting Baker and follow him. And I think Baker Mayfield did a really good job as a quarterback. I've written about it many times over that he's done more for this franchise. His statistics, his longevity as a quarterback with the Browns was longer than anybody we've had, even going back to prior to 1999, and so, yeah.
Yeah, we had talked a few months ago about Baker Mayfield and the whole extension thing. You just didn't know if he was gonna get extended,
Right.
and I mean, when you look at kind of the ownership and coaches, I mean, why do you think they did this? I mean, was there just kind of like a ceiling on where they thought Baker could take the team?
I think so. And this wasn't their quarterback. This new crew came in. This was not Baker's group, and I think they gave him that time. There's been a lot of stories, this past season with Baker's injury and how that affected him. They were saying 2 months or back in January that he was still their guy, but obviously they're a football organization. They want to win a Super Bowl, and in their business, it's a that's their goal. So, Baker, with going into that, I mean, you kind of knew, like, when you start looking back at the fact that they weren't negotiating with him, they were letting him go into his 5th season. Kind of what was going to happen next year anyway. So, they did their due diligence. But just to make it so public was odd. From the perspective that it wasn't something that traditionally in the last year or two with Andrew Berry, that he's usually, some of these deals get done and it's like, oh, whoa, where did that come from? So, kind of like the Omari Cooper deal, earlier in the week, the Browns did tie up Amari Cooper in that trade. And so, yeah, those are the sorts of things that we kind of expect sometimes. So this publicly outward pursuit of Watson was kind of a shock to everyone's system. And then, we were like coming off of that sort of, okay, well, we didn't get him. So now we're going to, what are we going to do with Baker and moving forward? Or are we going to bring in another guy? And then all of a sudden it changed in 6 hours. So.
Yeah, I mean, you've been a Browns fan for quite a while, covered the Browns for quite a while as well. I mean, has this really been the most roller coaster season? Because you start the season and there were thoughts of Super Bowl, or thoughts of,
oh, absolutely, yeah.
And then when you move it to the the OBJ stuff and Jarvis Landry and all of that, and I mean, has this just been the most roller coaster
for us older fans? I don't know how much more that we can take. I don't know if our hearts can. I think that if you talk to anybody over the age of 40 right now, or even 35, everyone's like, okay, this is enough. Like, now, if you start talking to the younger group, who, and I write with some of these guys who are in their early 20s, and they've never seen anything prior, so there's a lot more history with us and our knowledge of what the Browns have been through. So this has just been so publicly displayed. It's probably the biggest. Yeah, I would say it's got to be one of the top 2 or 3 moments in Cleveland Browns history. I mean, it's just absolutely. I mean, we were having this discussion last night. When back in the day, in the mid 1980s, you had Bernie Kosar, who came out from Miami, and they had the there was that supplemental draft, and so it was such a huge news story then. We were talking about how that was so big, but how does this compare to that? This is a different kind of it's a huge story. So I would say, yeah, between that story in 85, then you had Art Modell taking the team away from them in 95 to this. I don't know what Paul Brown, the great Paul Brown, who founded the Cleveland Browns, would be thinking today.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, it's not all downside. You know, at least it's not a fumble. Like was that at a 1 yard later inside the 5?
Oh yeah,
Ernest
let's see
Biner?
the drive, then the fumble, and what was the other one? I'm forgetting the fumble, the drive. Man, I can't think of it now. Okay,
Probably better not to. I'm guessing.
no, it's or the shot. I'm thinking of a different sport with Michael.
Yes,
Yeah,
over Craig
Michael
Elo.
Jordan. Yep.
Yes. Oh
There you
yeah,
go.
I'm a
We can
Bulls
talk
fan.
about that another day.
Yes, we can. So when you look at, obviously there's a lot, with Deshaun, but now it shifts to Baker. You didn't have to give up Baker, so you could still, quite possibly get something for Baker. I don't know what you can quite get, maybe a third or fourth, but when you look at it, what are the best fits for Baker and going forward?
Well, I think that his request, at least it isn't publicly talked about, is the Indianapolis Colts. I think what I'm hearing this morning is that, I mean, at least I don't know how real it is, but that the Browns, are trying to trade him outside of the AFC. The Colts, obviously, they just went through Carson Wentz and got rid of him quickly. I don't know. I always have said, with the Seattle, go out to Seattle, kind of recover, mend your wounds. I mean, obviously his pride has been taking a huge hit. There's a lot of public support for Baker, but there's also a lot of national folks out there that are, saying that he wasn't going to take the Browns to the Super Bowl, and trying to, is he as good of a quarterback as he thinks he is? So I think going out to some place like Seattle, with Pete Carroll and that group, if they don't, if they keep that core niche out there, it's just, you're 2,000 more miles away from Cleveland, and he can continue making progressive commercials, and that'll be interesting to see what they do with that.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. I mean, if they have a one of him kind of, getting evicted from his home or what?
I think it would show. I think, Baker, from everyone that I've never met Baker personally, but I know some of the folks that I write for have met him personally, and they've all said the same thing, that he's a very good guy, character guy, publicly just, support. I think he genuinely is. The kid's from, Texas, Oklahoma. I lived in Kansas for 26 years. So, the Midwestern state of mind, they're very complimentary, good folk, so, going to a place like Seattle, Indianapolis, obviously the two. I mean, then you got the Saints. You got, since the Saints, that would be interesting. That would be NFC again, and it'd be a dome. You go down there, maybe, they can bring in some other pieces around Baker to help down there. So those would be some of the spots. I'll be anxious to see what some of the other Browns, like this week. Jarvis Landry was released. Some people have speculated that he was talking to people back in Cleveland, saying that he wants to come back now. Don't know how true that is.
Yeah.
I see him going to some place like Kansas City, or our fellow writer, Dawg Daily, talked about him going to Landry going to the Chiefs, or maybe Buffalo. So
interesting. That would be. I mean, the Chiefs just signed Juju.
Right. I saw. So that has you wondering. So if they sign him, then what does that mean for Landry? Is he going to, I don't think he'd follow Baker out to Seattle at this point.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I mean, and obviously when you look at with Baker, yeah, I mean, there was the whole stuff with his rift with OBJ, and and I think it was you that we talked about that. That was a lot of it. You were hearing, that was on Baker too.
Oh yeah, you really wonder. You've got to. There's lots of questions that we all, as Browns fans, if we were a fly on the wall in the Browns headquarters in Berea, Ohio, up in Cleveland, what are they actually talking about, and where was that exactly? Because I mean, you could just see it, that whole body language, everything. I don't want to, I don't know what happened in that locker room. I think Baker was very well received over the first couple seasons. and players would support him and come out and support him outwardly. That hasn't been the case. I mean, you're not hearing that a lot. You see some of these video clips of him trying to get his team up before a football game, and it's not maybe as inspiring, or it's inspiring, but you don't get the reaction from the players like you do maybe when you see other clips of other quarterbacks. So I don't know what happened there. I don't,
When you look at it, like, as as a fan or journalist, whatever, it's easy to kind of step back, take and just kind of look at these players, in a vacuum and not realize obviously they are people and stuff, and in locker rooms too. You wonder about when the players have the big commercials and all this, and if that plays an effect, and then because players know within the locker room who is real and who is just kind of putting on a show. And I always wondered kind of what's going to happen within the college football ranks with the NIL, and you know what I mean? Like, how money can kind of in notoriety can kind of creep into.
Interesting. Yep.
Well,
you look at the college portal right now, like in basketball, men's and women's team. I mean, my daughter, I think I've told you, my daughter played hoops at the University of Buffalo. By the way, I'm going to give a plug to the UB Buffalo women's basketball team has a game on national TV today at 3:00 Eastern. They're playing the Tennessee Lady Vols. Big game. Buffalo's the number 13 seed this year. This will be the fourth year now that the Bulls have gone to the tournament, and my daughter got to play in the first 2 years when she was on the team. That's when things started to roll. That team that my daughter graduated on made it to the Sweet 16, where they lost to South Carolina. So if anybody's out there who's a big basketball hoops fan of both men's and women's basketball, watch that game. It should be a really good one. Tennessee's got a few kids that are injured, and Buffalo is a very good team. They've won 9 games in a row. So, okay,
No, I say
I digress.
It's been an interesting season. In the women's side, you don't usually see a lot of upsets, but this year you are seeing a few. And I'm an Iowa fan, and the men didn't do well, but the women are doing really well.
But I guess you had talked about with the transfer portal, I mean, that's what you're seeing now is all these kids are staying for a year and then they're just leaving, and they're going. It's making for a lot for the coaches, for these organizations. Try to have some stability. It seems like that's being lost a little bit right now.
So, yeah, I mean, when you talk about Baker, I haven't really, I mean, we went into the fantasy football season. A lot of people were like, oh, Baker and OBJ. And I was out on them. And it's hard for me, to look at Baker and see a difference from like a Sam Darnold or whatever. I mean, he's fiery. He's he's going to try to get it done, and he's had some good spurts. As maybe Darnold did, and so it's kind of interesting. And then I did hear from a Carolina news media guy, and he was saying that they're not going to pursue Baker, and so it's
okay.
Because it's interesting. You look at that. I mean, that almost would be a lateral move. And when you look at Baker and, some other teams, Seattle, that I like that.
I mean, do you think Pete Carroll, I mean, that's my thought there is that Pete Carroll could probably get the most out of, like, I'm thinking about other teams around. I mean, that would be one, I don't know, just.
That makes sense because he's a former college, coach, and he's kind of got that same personality. I mean, it might be like oil and water. You never know.
Right.
And so then go ahead.
No, I was just going to say after the defense by a lot of folks that are supporting Baker these days, especially with everything that's gone down, is they'll say, well, he took him to the playoffs. We beat Pittsburgh twice. We humbled them over there in Pittsburgh 2 years ago. And so then people will, and those same supporters will say, well, Deshaun Watson's only won the same amount of playoff games as Baker Mayfield. The records are very similar. Statistically, they aren't that far off. I mean, but you can see, like, with touchdowns and interceptions, that there is some real differences. Deshaun's actually been sacked a lot. He's a running gun, he's all over the, but his sack numbers are higher than Baker's as well. So, But you've guaranteed $230 million to this player, which is really, that's the other part that's not sitting well with a lot of people here in the Cleveland area, because that's guaranteed money, and he didn't play last year for reasons, and now he's going to be the face of the franchise for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that was a huge thing. I mean, more than Aaron Rodgers got by a lot, and living here in Wisconsin and being a Bears fan, I not a huge Aaron Rodgers fan, but I mean, he's done it before.
No, didn't Kevin Mack or no Khalil, wasn't he with you guys?
He was,
and now he's going to be with the Chargers.
Yeah, so he got traded, and as a Bears fan, I was good with that because you look at kind of where the teams are, and obviously you saw the Bears versus the Browns, and they've got a new coaching staff, and the Bears they're still building, and I like what the front office is doing.
Yeah,
they don't have expectations. When you look at the Browns, they've had expectations, and now it's weird because going into the season, they had super high expectations.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's almost going to be like somehow the expectations are going to be even higher, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely. That's as a lifelong fan, we've never been to a Super Bowl. Come on. Everybody knows. Cleveland's like the joke around, the country because, they're one of the few teams. They've never gone. I lived in Kansas.
They're the Lions. They're not the Lions. So.
Okay. Right. Well, but yeah, so, this is a really odd, pressure cooker moment in Cleveland Browns history because you've guaranteed all this money and you've brought in these guys who to build this team into a Super Bowl contender. And now they're going after a guy who didn't play last year. Obviously there's a lot of stuff on the side, but now despite that, he's a great ball player and he will likely help this team win, but how far does he, take him? Obviously I think right now the Browns should, we'll see what Vegas comes out with and things, but as we get closer to the season and depending on what the Browns do in the draft and, will they be a Super Bowl favorite?
Yeah. They've got to be up there. Well, depending on how many games Watson will get. That's still yet to be decided. My question then would be, as someone who writes for, with the team and studies the team, does Watson fit in better with the Stefanski offense?
I think so. Yeah, that's I'm not the biggest X's and O's guy, but from what I read from my fellow colleagues and stuff, they've all shared that opinion that he, what Stefanski is trying to get done, and what he can add, that those extra dimensions, being able to get a scramble out of the pocket. He's, obviously what happened to Baker last year really was significant, but what Watson can do better than Baker, he can throw the ball very well deep. He can, we have Amari Cooper now, who we'll see who else that they can get in there to try to, really push the offense. And you got the best running backs in the NFL on our team at the moment. I think the Browns will go forward with both Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I'm still wondering about Kareem Hunt because we're 4 months before the season and he's if they were to release or trade him, they would save, I think, upwards of around $5 or $6 million. The last time I was looking at those, I've talked a couple times about trading Kareem Hunt this off season. I know some people have not really enjoyed that perspective, but we're not getting rid of Nick Chubb. So,
in this, and maybe that whole Kareem Hunt situation maybe was foreshadowing of this, right? Because Hunt had to rehabilitate his image, and for all intents and purposes, from what we've heard, that he's been a stand-up citizen at least, and so really the Browns have shown that they're willing to kind of take a flyer on some.
You're right, and that's
players.
Yeah, and that's very, very, very accurate. I say that they're not going, they're looking for character guys, but also, they've taken in a few that have, from all intents and purposes have turned some things around. Kareem Hunt is a local kid, grew up in the Cleveland area, went to school at Toledo. So, there's some, he's a local kid. So Yeah, I think Deshaun Watson. I mean, I think he was on his Instagram. He was very excited to join the Dog Pound. He put that out there last night, and the fact that he changed his mind from initially, apparently, I don't know. We'll never know officially. They were, were the Browns actually out of the running? Maybe, but they said that the Browns continued to pursue the whole spiel. So I guess the Browns are very persistent.
Well, and I'm sure when you look at some of the additions that they made, that might have helped too. So, talk a little bit about the addition of Amari Cooper. I mean, he's been an interesting case. I mean, he's been a number one wide receiver. He's been injured. What did maybe that mean to him joining Watson joining the team, and then what does Amari Cooper bring to the Browns?
Well, the Browns are were without they dumped Landry, and so Omari can come in there. I still don't know. I don't know if he can be that number one, but he's definitely an all-pro. His stats, if you go back and look at it, he's a much more consistent player as far as yards, touchdowns. But he's never had he's never blown it out of the water with. I think his highest touchdown numbers per year has been 7 or 8, maybe, or at the very most. So, I'm my only concern there, just personally, is you had somebody like Jarvis Landry who came in here, 2018, had some similar numbers when he was playing in Miami, but I think Omari's got better route running. I think he can spread the field. I mean, I think Watson, and he can get that ball over the top, and that's what the Browns have got to learn, figure out offensively how to stretch the field. I mean, Watson is going to be able to do that instantly. Because you have to respect him. You got to respect him scrambling out of the pocket. I think somebody like Nick Chubb will, opening that up, Kareem Hunt, if he's on the team, they'll have a lot more, gaps to run. And so, yeah, Amari Cooper, it'll be good. The thing about, I've read a lot, and I don't know what you know more about Amari, but from everything that I've read, I mean, he's not on social media. He just plays the game. And, we have a kid, Nick Chubb, our running back, who's all about football and just winning the game. And I think getting a couple of these guys on the team will definitely help. So,
yeah, Amari Cooper, there was a little bit of some sideline antics, like he wanted to get the ball and, with the Cowboys, but that's probably, good thing. You want a wide receiver.
I remember, didn't he play? He was with the Raiders, right? Initially, wasn't he?
He was, yes.
Yeah, because there were a couple games. He came to Cleveland. There was a game that I personally, just he's a big receiver. He takes up, you got to pay attention to him. And I don't know I think he's 6'2", 6'3", maybe. I'm not sure. I don't have the stats in front of me right now, but that's one thing. I mean, we need some height.
6'1".
Yeah, we need a little bit of height at the wide receiver position. There was a lot of talk coming into this draft before everything has happened. What the Browns were going to do with that number 13 pick. And the Browns were going to go in and try to get one of these top collegiate receivers like Garrett Wilson or Drake London. Yeah, or Olave. And now they won't probably get one of those guys, but they still, like I said, have the second-round pick, the 2 third-round picks. There are a lot of good guys out there. There's this kid from North Dakota State, the Christian Watson. I've seen him projected in a lot of these drafts. I've written about him. There's, he's got a lot. He's got speed, length. I think he's like 6'4", 6'3". Yeah. Oh, you got the topic up there. Cool. Look at there.
So, yeah, I mean, when you look at it, so the Browns do have Donovan Peoples-Jones, who, I don't know if he's ready to kind of break out, or you do see them, needing now to, in the draft, kind of get a wide receiver then.
It's funny when you talk about Donovan Peoples-Jones because, coming, I don't know if maybe we talked about this the last time, but going into the, last year when all the hype and, OBJ was still there, Landry, everyone was saying, oh, Donovan Peoples-Jones is going to take over that role. I mean, he had an outstanding training camp. He made a couple circus catches, on the practice field. So everyone thinks that, he's going to have a breakout year. And he played better. I don't know his final numbers, but it wasn't over the top crazy. They were better than his first year. And
see 34 receptions, 597 yards, and
500. Right.
and 3 touchdowns.
3 touchdowns. And the one of his one touchdown was a Hail Mary pass at the end of a half against the Arizona Cardinals when they got beat up by the Arizona Cardinals, and Baker threw a pass there that he caught. It was great. You know, I'd love to keep him. I'm anxious to see what the Browns do with that. Is Donovan Peoples-Jones one of those players that could be part of a package with Baker? I've seen that a couple times. So if he's
only 23 too.
Well, but he's from Michigan.
Yeah, I guess as an Ohio. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No,
No, it's one of those. Well, you know, when back in the day, back in the mid or early 2000s, the Browns have only drafted 2 first-round wide receivers in the first round. 2 wide receivers in the first round. Braylon Edwards from Michigan kid.
Yep.
And Corey Coleman from Baylor. And Braylon Edwards had some really good seasons here with the Browns. And there was a lot of up front, you know, the fact that he was very outward and public. You know, he was a kind of a boisterous character. But he had some good years. But you know, we just have this thing about Michigan or that team up north.
Oh yeah, I get it.
I'm not supposed to say Michigan.
You're not supposed to use the M when they play each other.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, when you look at this team, I mean, really, they have some pieces, especially the defense was, you know, solid, and you know, I mean, if they could add, you know,
we're waiting to hear what happens with the Javion Clowney.
Yes,
there's been a lot of news in the last 24 hours that the Browns have offered him a 2-year deal. I think about $12 million per year, and now that they've got Watson, I was hearing that he could. We'll see what happens. It would be great to get him back. I thought he had especially the second part of the season with Garrett. I think he ended up with 9 sacks on the season. So getting him back in tow. But the Browns have lost a couple players, but they've also gotten a couple. They re-signed Anthony Walker, the linebacker, veteran guy. That's a good move. A lot of fans were upset that MJ Stewart, he was a free agent. He decided to go to Houston. And he was a really good role player, backup cornerback. But with the Browns having some of their solid cornerbacks already, Denzel Ward in the mix, and Greedy Williams, and then Greg Newsome, the second, the rookie from Northwestern. So they did make a trade. Mac Wilson was traded for.
Is that Chase Winovich?
Yes. Yep. I'll be anxious to see what that's like. Do you know much about him?
Yeah, I mean, he was. It's always interesting, right?
Because he's from Michigan.
He is from Michigan, and he was with the Patriots, I believe, right?
Yeah, he played. Yep.
You know, and it's like when you're in a fantasy football league and you play with someone who has been a longtime champ that's won, you know, and they make a trade with you. You're just kind of like, what do they know? Right. And so it's like, what do the Patriots know about Chase Winovich that they're trying to get, you know, trade him? And so
there's a lot of people here that follow the team. Mac Wilson was one of those guys too that had some really good moments, but I think there was always some disappointment. And he came out and said some things that I can't specifically speak to I think it was just a good move for him. I think he tried his best when he was with the Browns, but now he gets to move on. He'll probably become an all-pro now, and we'll be watching him on Sundays when the Browns are sitting at home. Hopefully not. You know, that's not supposed to happen anymore, but
no. So let's look at that. So I mean, what are your expectations for this year? I mean,
Super Bowl.
Right. You got Super Bowl or bust. I mean, it's got to be pretty soon. I mean, you know, obviously we don't know about Deshaun Watson, how long he's going to be out. And presumably
Deshaun Watson is what, 26? He's 26, right? 26 years old. I'm thinking that he might be suspended for 4 to 6 games, potentially, going into the season. Now, the Browns, I haven't heard anything. I don't know if you've seen anything this morning, but, you know, Case Keenum, their backup, was due $1 million bonus yesterday. And I haven't heard otherwise. So they also owed him, I think, $5 or $6 million for this upcoming season. So we'll see where that goes. I'm assuming that they're going to keep him at this point since they gave him $1 million bonus. Maybe there's some other things going on behind the scenes. What was the other part of the? I kind of.
Well, no, I was going to say when you think about it, the Bears. It's so weird when you think of $1 million. To us, regular people, it's not a big deal. But to NFL, players, and especially a backup quarterback, that's really not a lot because I believe the Bears even had that for their backup and which we're not going to. Bears aren't going to need, but that was a similar. Are
you happy with the Mitch Trubisky moving over to Pittsburgh, or you got to see Mitch?
And so it's interesting. Listen to Chicago radio. There's a lot of people, a big half of people that are terrified that he's going to do well. Terrified, and that that he's.
Do you think that he'll be the starter in Pittsburgh?
I think he will.
Okay.
When you look at Mason Rudolph, I mean, you guys, you guys know his helmet at least, so or his head.
I think he went to Oklahoma State, which
Yes. So, but he'll be the quarterback, and I think Mike Tomlin will get more out of him. He's just not going to be a star. In Pittsburgh, they don't need that. And a big thing when the Bears let him go, it was, he's horrible, and that's part of it. But a big part of it was the coaching. And now that Nagy is gone, it's kind of shifted, and it's like, okay, well, it was more Nagy, and so I'm not terrified that he's going to do well. He's a great guy. I saw him in the 2019. He's a great guy. I think he's going to do well. Is he going to lead them to the Super Bowl? I don't think so.
So, yeah, I mean, if we assume that the Browns are going to be without Watson, let's say he's out 4 or 6 games, then you got to rely on your backup. And if it's still Case Keenum, I mean, they were able to win with Case Keenum last year.
Barely,
the other guy, right? The other free agent that the Browns had is the Mullins kid. He's still a free agent. You wonder, Nick Mullins. He started for 1 year there in San Francisco, and everyone was really impressed with his performance the one Thursday night game when they lost to the Raiders, where they got the lead late, and it was, some people said that was the best Browns drive of the season when they came back, but of course they lost. So I don't know if it's their best drive. I can never qualify that as their best drive if they lost the game. Like if they win the game, okay, then it was the best drive. But that's like saying, like when the Browns lost the drive game, like they took the lead with 4 minutes to go back in the day. Again, I don't want to bring up bad memories, but I mean, that was a great drive, and then you think they're going to win the game, but anyway.
There are no moral Super Bowls. We'll just say that.
No, as a Browns fan who hasn't seen a Super Bowl, and we rely on talking about the old championships and how great the team was back in the 40s, 50s, and 1964. That's tough. And when you're talking to a 20-year-old, 25-year-old who's followed the team since well after that, it's hard to I give a lot of these younger fans credit for being loyal. And we'll see where it goes. But yeah, the expectations are high. Obviously, I think it's got to be the Super Bowl from this point forward.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And so, this year might be tough with kind of suspension and just kind of adjusting everything. But how far do you think our Deshaun-led Browns are away from the Super Bowl?
Well, you look at every part of their team. You look at their running game; it's the best in the league. You look at their defense; they have one of the best defensive linemen in Myles Garrett, who tied the record or broke the record for most sacks for a Brown in a season that's at 16. I think he'll have an outstanding season ahead. If they bring back Clowney or if they bring somebody else in, they'll be solid there. Obviously, I think their defensive front is something, their defensive tackles is something that's still probably one of their weaker points, and trying to find some guys in the draft or maybe some of these free agents to bring in to solidify that, because that was we were getting run on quite a bit. Our secondary, it's interesting. You talk about our secondary. Some people say, we don't need any help in the secondary, but it's like, if you watched the games or you were there, like a lot of us fans, we lost several games last season because of our new secondary that opening game against Kansas City. I mean, John Johnson III just lost You know, I can't think of the kid's name from KC. I should know him. He's a star. Are you there? Oh, you froze up. All right. We got.
All right, I'm back.
Yes. Can you hear me?
My internet went down. Gotta love it.
I'm thinking it's me somehow. I told you before.
No, it was me. Yeah.
Still on air? All right.
Yep. So
Excellent.
when you look at, the Browns, you were talking about the different pieces and how far they are away. And, you're talking about the secondary kind of last that I had talked about. And it's interesting. When you look at all the other teams in the AFC, it's going to be a dogfight. Even with Deshaun, even with all this talent, it's going to be hard, isn't it?
That's an excellent point. Oh yeah. The AFC West is just monumentally going to be, they're stacked, and what the Chargers are doing and the Chiefs are always going to be there. Who am I forgetting out of it? Well,
the Bengals,
Wilson.
Yeah.
And then you got absolutely. Yeah. So, it's going to be a dogfight. We are the dog pound, so I'm going to give us a good shot. There were just, we'll see. I think the Browns have on paper again, like last year, are going to have everything says is this team should be one of the best teams in the league. If it weren't for a couple things here or there. And to be quite honest, Baker Mayfield made some mistakes throughout the season. Time management. I think Kevin Stefanski, you really wonder when you think about that whole relationship where it went south, because they were riding some success coming into last year. Something went awry between the coach and Baker. That's probably has a lot to do with where we are standing today and why we have Deshaun Watson. I think it's from a football perspective, getting Deshaun Watson now in Cleveland is a game changer. And where it goes from here, I think, it's going to be a dogfight. I think the Chiefs know, like I talked to my friends out there in Kansas, and they know they got to get better on defense. They're looking for some upgrades there. And, we'll see. It's going to be an interesting lead up to the season. I'm anxious to see how it all plays out over the next 4 months before we actually kick off in September. So,
well, that's what I was going to say. When the dust settles, obviously it's still really raw for a lot of people. When you think of, everything that Watson has to deal with still, and everything, all the baggage that comes with, but
yeah,
he also brings a lot more potential. And when the dust settles,
yeah,
do you think like your cousin and some of those diehard fans are saying they're out? Do you think they'll just kind of like, because when I look at it, here in Wisconsin, people are so out on last year probably about this time on Rodgers, are like, oh, he's a diva, he's this.
Yeah.
But once he got on the field and started winning,
absolutely,
they're right back on the train.
It's a really good yes, because emotions are raw. I'm counselor by day. I've mentioned that to you off air, and time changes. Time has a way of working things out. I think you can, I mean, personally as a fan, I'm going to try my best to separate the player and potentially what those things are happened and root for the team. I'm a Browns fan. I'm wearing my, I wear the, proudly for that, going back historically. I mean, this franchise has been around forever, and it's, though I don't think some of the people in the past will approve of what some of the things have happened. The Browns have been through a lot of, Art Modell taking this team out of Cleveland in 1995 was a horrific moment in the history of the franchise. And a lot of people that were able to blame a particular person. Now it's like, are you blaming the organization, and what don't we know? I think it's very, like I said at the beginning of the interview with you today, I think it's very vital. And I hope that the Browns already recognize this, that they need to publicly come out and really talk about what their plans are to support, other issues outside of the football field that show that they're trying to do something as an organization to because they've really damaged. Really, I can't emphasize. I mean, you can go look on Brown's Twitter feeds and social media places. I'll give you one example. There's a website, social media. I think it's dogpound.net. The owner of that, I mean, 20,000 followers and whatnot, like a blog. He came out with a long letter yesterday and basically shut down all of his.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty significant. And especially, I mean, I know it's social media but this is something who's been doing it for 10 years. He grew his brand, and he made a personal choice to say, no, I'm not going to do this, because he brought in talking about his morals and and so there's a lot right now. It's very raw right now, but I think over time, like you said, people really hated Rodgers and everything, but if you're a football fan, we've bled orange and brown since I was a kid, and we've seen a lot of heartache. So we're going to root on the team, or I'm going to root on Nick Chubb, and I'm going to, root for, the team. So, yeah.
It's so interesting because, yes, I mean, as a fan, you want them to win. But you also, yeah, I mean, you want to have players that you can root for personally. It's so interesting. And are you a Reds fan as well? Cincinnati Reds?
So I'm not a diehard Reds fan. I will tell you, my short story on that is that my next door neighbors, I grew up back in Northeastern Ohio. They were from Cincinnati. So as a kid, I got an opportunity. They would go down to Cincinnati a couple times during the summer, and it was always a great trip. We'd stay downtown. We'd meet we'd find out where the players were staying. This is back in the 70s and 80s, and you could still kind of interact with the players and get their autographs. And so, yeah, I will go to a Reds game a time or two, and it's a great city.
So maybe you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Pete Rose, right?
Yes.
I mean, maybe at the time we didn't know until afterwards or whatever. But
I guess the question to you, like that question though, like this situation, like those sorts of things, like that situation, gambling, this situation, and we don't know all the detail. I mean, there are still, that's where a lot of people that are like, trying to separate. It's a different type of situation, and you're offending a certain, the population out there, because they are different types of behaviors. One deal, so I guess that's where this is a tricky time.
It is, well, and here's the other thing, and obviously this one, is probably controversial because no one wants to talk about it anymore. But the whole thing with what happened with Kobe Bryant, right? I mean, that was huge, and that's really kind of, not talked about at all anymore, because of him passing away and everything. But sports has a way of kind of, if you're a great player and a winner, of kind of, moving you past some of those discretions a little bit quicker, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I'm glad you reminded me of that with the Kobe Bryant. Yes. You look at Ben Roethlisberger. I mean,
Absolutely.
We're all Cleveland Browns fans, and we loathe Ben Roethlisberger. And then as a Browns fan, we like to, pick on Steelers fans and remind them of the alleged allegations going back. And so those are similar to that degree. So that's another, yeah.
It's interesting because prior to the Super Bowl, I had a chance to talk to the Tigress Talk podcast, a bunch of ladies who do a fantastic job with the Bengals stuff, and obviously I asked them their thoughts on Ben Roethlisberger, and obviously as women they're completely out on Ben and everything. And so it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see kind of what their thoughts on this whole Deshaun stuff with the Browns. And if
I don't think this is going to fade. I personally, just being in this area, and I mean, for right now, the immediate reaction is going to be a lot. I think there's going to be a lot of pushback already. I think you're going to see that even visibly. This press conference coming up is going to be one humdinger of a, I'll be very anxious to, as many Browns fans will, how they're going to handle this upcoming initial presser when they introduce. I don't know how I'd like to know how they're going to try to do that. Are they going to introduce him? Are they going to, is it going to be a public thing? Is it, the other thing that a lot of people have been talking about, and this is where it's like, I'll give you an example, like Mary Kay Cabot, she writes for the Cleveland.com. Okay. And I don't know Mary Kay, and I've been critical of Mary Kay a few times, because even over the last year and a half, she's been very critical of Baker Mayfield. My understanding of it, and I don't know her personally, but from what I hear from other people that know Mary Kay, who have been closer to her, that she knows like the owners, like Jimmy and D Haslam.
Mm-hmm.
Now, D Haslam, she's co-owner of the Browns, and so for obviously they had to say okay to this deal. So Mary Kay's been speculating for months that Baker was not going to be here, or more than months. So what do they know that we don't? I mean, so we're all speculating, and that's why emotions are very high. So it's been the opinion is that with this press conference, that she needs to be in attendance, she needs to be talking, she needs to be there visibly. I don't know if you're not going to heal the wound, but you need to be there to represent and speak for the Browns. And so I'll be anxious to see how that is all handled by the organization.
Yeah, this has to be just the most interesting and nuanced kind of situation, because I mean, you have a talented player who, quite frankly, could bring the Browns a Super Bowl. Yet there's a lot of questions, and it's I mean, as an outsider, I mean, there has to be eventually there's going to have to be some type of miniseries movie about this. It just this season.
You go back. The Browns have the greatest. One of the movies that they created a couple of years back was with Kevin Costner, Draft Day. It's one of our Browns live for that, because it was like the perfect, that's how we all want it to play out. And it's almost like that, minus the fact that the guy that they got is, because the Browns traded away all these draft picks, but we still are speculating on that character side. So I hope as adults that the ownership of the Browns and the organization, who seemingly have had good, knowledge of things, have done their due diligence. So as a Browns fan, I'll continue to cheer for the Browns. I still have season tickets. It'll be a very interesting time frame when we get there and the season starts. Probably he won't be starting from the get-go, so it might be October, November. I think Case Keenum, I'd like to see Case Keenum stay. I think he'd be a reliable guy that could really help this team at least start the season. I mean, there's some other guys out there like Marcus Mariota, who I've speculated in the past that could come in, but Case has been around Kevin Stefanski for a long time, and I think this has really hurt Kevin Stefanski. I mean, also, I mean, he came in here with the shit. I mean, he was a rock star.
Yeah.
I mean, it's smooth operator. And, the people liked him because, he was an attractive character, and he couldn't seemingly do anything wrong. And last year, obviously, there were a lot of struggles. Who's more to blame? I think I wrote an article about, is Baker to blame or Kevin to blame? Who are we? So this has hurt Kevin's. The fact that he was part of this, and he went to Houston to try to get Watson. So that's been publicly, shared a lot of anger toward him too. So.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. Definitely,
it'll be fun. It'll be fun, but it'll be odd.
Lots to write about. Good for you.
Yes.
Lots to talk about. I mean, that's what, on our NFC North pod, as a Bears fan, it's, not a fan of Rodgers, staying in the division, but it gives us more to talk about. And now Davante Adams is gone as well. So
was that a surprise to you with Davante? I mean, the fact that Rodgers signed and has, already signed, that then Davante decided to go ahead and go to the Raiders.
It wasn't a surprise to me, and I know Gridiron Grub on our podcast as well, because just the money didn't work out, and he was saying he wasn't going to play for the franchise tag. So we had that, but as Packer fans, I mean, it's funny. You kind of, I mean, they have an interesting kind of thing, that everyone's going to want to come and play for Rodgers and stay there, but when you listen to David Carr on network, he was saying that it's kind of been in the works for a while. They're a family, they really wanted Derek and they really wanted to play with each other. So that was a big thing.
They had played together in college, and which I don't think a lot of people realize. That everyone was completely shocked by the news, but then when you start seeing, oh well, this is. There was a connection going way back, because a lot of Browns fans were thinking after when Watson said no initially, like, okay, well, let's go get Derek Carr or let's go get Jimmy Garoppolo. Those are the two names that kept being talked about.
Yeah. And I believe he signed the deal with the Raiders is for less than he was going to get from the Packers. So when you look at that, as a franchise, it's easy to kind of look at yourself and say, okay, everybody loves us. Everyone's going to want to come to us, but not really, and I know in talking with our Packers person, Danielle, she was talking about, well, they had to have known, Rodgers had to know this was going to happen. And
absolutely. Yeah. Right.
Because otherwise he wouldn't have, signed on. And so, and when you sign for that amount of money, there's just not going to be enough for a bunch of other
Jarvis
people.
Landry run up to Green Bay now? Will he go?
I don't think they have enough money.
Okay.
Because they're letting a lot of people go. Devondre Campbell, they signed him, and so that's gonna be interesting. I mean, you have Aaron Rodgers, so they're assuming they have the division, but now without Devontae, it's.
Well, I'll be rooting for your Bears. Go Justin Fields.
Well, I'm rooting for him too. I'm not expecting.
What about Akeem Hicks? What do you know about Hicks? He's available, right?
He's a talented player. He's been injured. That's the other
thing. A little bit older, right?
If he's on the downside, but he was a difference maker for the Bears. So
would he take the? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Would he take the place of someone like if the Browns don't get Jadeveon Clowney? Could he come in and take that?
Clowney's on the inside, or is Clowney? Yeah, he definitely could. Yeah.
Okay.
And obviously, it depends on the scheme. I believe the Browns are
4-3.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
He would be great, and when you look at that, he doesn't have to be the guy, right?
Right.
And that would probably be
good. Miles there. Yeah.
That would be a good fit for him, because with the Bears, he kind of had to be the guy, and he was. And that's why he got injured. And and so that could maybe extend his career if he is with other people that he wasn't the main focus. So
he's in his early 30s, right? Isn't he?
Yeah, okay. I believe so. And it's interesting. That's considered old, but it is, So, well, yeah, I mean, I definitely appreciate your time.
Yes.
And I got the dog pound in the background. I don't know if you saw that.
I saw. That's awesome. You gotta tell me how you just use the background pictures, I assume, right?
So I just find them on the Zoom, and you gotta,
that's awesome.
So I'm excited.
I don't see me back there in the background, but that's okay. I think then that's Hollywood
I think you're
Higgins
hidden by our pictures. So
what now?
I think you're hidden by our pictures. So
Okay. No, I see Hollywood Higgins in the background now. He's a free agent. He's going to Carolina on a 1-year deal.
oh, that'll be an interesting.
So
And
yeah,
obviously, you know,
Carolina's got a lot of work to do. They
do.
got a new group there, right? Yeah.
They
So,
do, and they don't even know what they're going to do with the quarterback yet. So draft time's going to be interesting. It got a little bit less interesting draft time for the Browns, but they can still pick up some players. And
yes. Well, thank you for having me on the show. This has been fantastic. We'll have to do this again. Have me on anytime. I love talking about the Browns, and we'll have to have you on my podcast, the Johnny Cleveland.
Absolutely.
Podcast.
I am down for that. And so where can everyone find you again?
So it's at John Suchan. It's JOHNSUCHAN on Twitter. Please follow me there. I write for the Dog Pound Daily, write for the King James Gospel, which is the fan-sided for the Cleveland Cavaliers as well. They're having a hot season.
Mm-hmm.
Also write for Cleveland Sports Talk. So check me out. I got a couple articles on Dog Pound Daily yesterday, and I think one coming out today about the whole Deshaun story. So please check that out. And and we've got the podcast, Johnny Cleveland Podcast. We're going to get that going again. Again, thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again. And once again, this has been NFL Outdated Cover 2 series with the Cleveland Browns. Thanks again.